I just want to have it on our radar that when we do any reviews subsequently, that it carries over.
Well, I mean, this is just a minor subdivision and
Yeah,
lot line
I know.
adjustment. It's not pertaining to any development. And the issues of any existing easements and the like would come up at the time of the site plan application. So they would be addressed at that time. And anything that's pre-existing, it's pre-existing. That would be the applicant's burden to deal with it.
Anybody? Any questions, Rick?
I thought it was a well-done presentation.
Joanne, you're comfortable?
Yeah, I think the main points in my memo were reflected in their testimony. I mean, these are two irregularly shaped large properties for this area. They're trying to come up with a creative solution to remedy that. You know, they'll still have the split zone property, which for the purposes of this application isn't really germane, but so that the board and the applicant is aware that, you know, any potential development will have to deal with that split zone property. But it is a heavily constrained site. I mean, we all know it's got a lot to contend with on both sides. So at the time of any development application, we would look at all of those factors. They do have some pre-existing non-conforming conditions, just for the record, which they already highlighted, but they all pertain to the gas station site, lot 32, proposed 3201. It's for lot depth. Where 300 is required, 196 exists and is proposed. Front yard where 100 feet is required and 75 feet exists and is proposed. Side yard where 100 feet is required and 76 exists and is proposed, and then rear yard, 100 feet is required and 56 feet exist and proposed. But nothing for this lot line adjustment is exacerbating those conditions. They're just going to flow with the land at this point.
In layman's terms, I don't see this as causing any harm to the township or any of the residents around this property. And if it takes a piece of property that has severe development constraints and helps make it a bit more usable, I'm not sure why we wouldn't support that. If there's no harm to the township or the residents and we're helping a property owner make their property more usable, I'm not sure why. I don't see any issue with it. Am I missing anything?
No, and I think it also creates opportunity for
I think
better rateable.
Pretty clear cut.
So it helps
Right.
us, it's not just helping the property owner, it's helping the town.
Generally, properties on a state highway are that's where you want the development to take place, and if you've got site constraints and title issues and non-conforming setbacks, this somewhat helps alleviate that issue.
I see upside to the township. I see upside to the landowner. I'm not seeing any downside. We're not taking away a residential lot. I just don't see an issue with it.
Are there any conditions at all on this?
I was just gonna say, any
Chris,
conditions?
that you're aware of? I move approval of the lot line adjustment.
Well,
They would just be,
I agree, but we have to
No,
technically open to the public.
right,
Oh,
yeah, I know, well, we were just,
Sorry about that.
I think the only conditions we have are just compliance with the housekeeping items in Dennis's
right.
February 27th, 2019 memo.
Correct.
I guess we'll open to the public for comment, right? Being it's all
I'll move open to
families.
the public.
If any of the daughters would like to come forward
I know, right?
and object, now's your chance.
Who's second? I did.
Move it close to the public.
I second.
All in
In
favor?
favor?
Aye.
You want to make a motion?
Now I'll
Yeah.
make the motion that we approve the lot line adjustment, okay?
All right.
I'll second it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Wolf,
Yes.
Mr. Delay,
Yes.
Ms. Gavigan,
Yes.
Mr. Castellano,
Yes.
Mr. Sobieski,
Yes.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Willie,
Yes.
Mr. Buckwalter.
Yes.
You're approved.
Congratulations, good luck.
Very good.
That's it.
Sorry we had to keep you guys waiting. Our
I know.
executive session went on longer than we expected. That's why we wanted to move you up, because we know you're paying professionals.
That's it. All right.
Thank you.
Have a safe journey home.
Okay.
Oh, we're not, we're home. Take care, good luck.
All right, the next item on the agenda is it's a resolution, just to memorialize the resolution.
A resolution memorialized.
Well, it's the resolution, right?
Existent.
Existing, the one we approved, I guess.
Last
The Waltz resolution for Backbook Road.
All right. We need to vote on that?
What's
Does
that?
it need to be a vote?
Yes, yeah, a roll call. vote,
Roll
too.
call vote. I'm
Just
sorry.
clarification, the resolution that we're looking at,
Extension of the bulk variances.
They could go for,
You edited it.
well, I just wanted to make. No, and that's what
But that's-
it's just
Yeah.
what I saw in the land use folder didn't have my edits.
The both of them should be there.
They're both-
There were 3 of them in our packet.
Okay, so, all right, so nobody has any problem with the edits, that's the one. Okay, that's fine. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So you need a motion and
I
then,
need a motion?
I move we approve the resolution.
Second.
All in favor?
It's a,
Wait,
It's
roll
a-
call.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's a roll call.
Yeah.
Mr. Wolf,
Yes.
Mr. Delay,
Yes.
Ms. Gavigan,
yes.
Mr. Castellano,
Yes.
Mr. Sobieski,
Yes.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Buckwalter.
yes.
All right. Next item on the agenda is Bochinek. Obviously, they're not here again, but their lawyer did send, right, their attorney did send a letter saying that they're willing to withdraw the application. The
So-
other option is we could,
So the attorney asked either for consent for continuance or if the board would like them to withdraw their application. They're still in session with the sale of the home without the variance.
the continuance would be with notification,
Right.
correct?
Yeah, they would have to renotice if we continue.
Which of the two alternatives is
less
less
painful.
painful to the applicant?
Well. I mean,
Probably
my
to grant the
generation-
continuance if,
Yeah.
I mean, if they wanna keep it alive, that's, I mean, for the applicant, that would be better for the applicant.
I don't know, my preference is to deny without prejudice.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
Then they have to resubmit.
Then they resubmit.
Is that a burdensome?
Well, I mean,
Or do they just withdraw the application?
Well, you could
well,
only,
then we're trusting them to withdraw the application. I mean, and if we don't grant the continuance, that could create a problem. Then
Clock.
they end up getting approved.
Because,
You know,
well,
because
no,
we
the,
didn't take
the
action.
automatic approvals, it almost has to be purposeful for, to grant an automatic approval. But the safest way to even avoid the issue is if you do dismiss it without prejudice, there's no clock anymore. There's no time clock for action, so.
I'll defer to you.
Yeah, I'm using your expertise
I'll
on this.
defer to you if that's what you
That-
think
that
is the
would
best.
be
Is that what you're most
preference.
comfortable
I
with?
think-
Then
Yeah,
I'm-
this has just dragged on too long. I mean,
All right.
they're gonna have to
Yeah.
renotice anyway.
I mean, this has been
Right.
continued how many times now? 3 or
A
4?
lot. I think the last time we were
I
even
think-
discussing
I
about,
think it's time to wipe the
The
slate
last time
clean
you
and
said
start
this
over.
is the last time, so.
Yeah.
Then let's do
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
So I would.
So it would be a motion to
Motion.
dismiss without prejudice.
prejudice. All
I
right.
move we dismiss without prejudice.
Second,
Do we need a roll call for that?
Roll call or,
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
okay.
Mr. Wolf,
Yes.
Mr. Delay,
Yes.
Ms. Gavigan,
Yes.
Mr. Castellano,
Yes.
Mr. Sobieski,
Yes.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Buckwalter.
Yes.
Why isn't Mr. Willie voting?
He wasn't here.
But we're voting on,
Something
Yeah, we're
like-
not,
Oh,
we're
you know
not
what?
memorializing, it's, just.
I just went by who voted
Okay.
the first time, so.
Oh.
Okay. Well,
He wasn't
He can
there.
vote.
He could vote.
Mr. Willie.
Yes.
He wasn't
This
here.
man
That's
fought
okay.
for our
He
vote,
wasn't
okay?
here the last time.
This man fought for our vote, okay? I want to make sure that he gets some return for his efforts.
Thanks, Rick. Hey, the Jersey Shore might allow me to go for free. I'll probably get attacked by a shark.
All right, the next item is the resignation of Dennis O'Neill. All right, I guess we accept it with many regrets, all right? So, do we need a roll call vote on
Just a
this?
motion.
All right, can I have a motion?
I move
To
we
accept his
accept
resignation?
with regrets.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it. All right. Oh, personnel item. All right, I guess, is this a motion to appoint, or,
Yes.
all right. Motion to appoint Bill Burr as the planning board engineer up until December 31st, 2019, and then subject to RFP, et cetera.
I move what you just said. I'm in a roll here, so that seems to be it.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
So do we need a roll call vote? though?
You need a roll call?
Let's do a roll call.
Let's do a roll call.
just to be
Okay.
safe.
Personnel.
Mr. Wolf.
Yes.
Let me just go here. Mr. Willie.
Yes.
Mr. Delay.
Yes.
Mr. Castellano.
Yes.
Mr. Sobieski.
Yes.
Ms. Gavigan.
Yes.
Ms. Lee.
Yes.
And you're filling for Leo, so Mr. Buckwalter.
Yes.
All right, moving right along. Unfinished business. I think, Chris, you're going to take this one on
Yeah.
the consistency review of ordinance 19-10.
Yes, this is on referral from the Township Committee. It's the ordinance 19-10. On referral, your role and responsibilities of the planning board is to make a determination that the proposed ordinance is consistent, substantially consistent with the master plan.
In layman's terms, this is the golf course ordinance.
Correct.
Net, okay.
I think it's consistent.
I move its approval as being consistent with the master plan and all the detailed language that's been discussed.
And
To death.
in particular,
And in particular.
the land use amendment. that
Land use
was
amendment
recently
that was
adopted.
part of it.
Yes.
All right, can I have a motion to approve?
I think I
Frank-
just
Oh, I'm
did.
sorry, you did,
I'll
okay.
second
Might need a
whatever Frank
second.
said.
Okay.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Do we need to do a
Wait,
roll
let's
call?
They need a
on
roll
that?
call? Okay,
Yeah.
we're doing roll calls, huh?
Mr. Willie.
Yes.
Mr. Delay.
Yes.
Mr. Wolf.
Yes.
Mr. Castellano.
Yes.
Mr. Sobieski.
Yes.
Ms. Gavigan.
Yes.
Ms. Lee.
Yes.
Mr. Buckwalter.
I'll recuse myself.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Oh, that's right.
Correct.
He's paying attention. All right, next item, open space and recreation plan. I think, Rick, you got this one?
Did you want to say something?
No, go ahead.
Oh,
Oh,
okay. No, Krista looked like she was
Yeah.
ready to go. I think this got labeled wrong. I think what was intended was to discuss the farmland preservation plan.
Yeah, that's what Catherine calls it, so
Yeah, I think there's some confusion on the terminology. Our farmland preservation plan was last revised in 2010. The SADC, the State Agricultural Development Committee, changed some rules recently, and in order to get certain grants, you need to update, or we need to update our farmland preservation plan every 10 years. So since the last update was 2010, we have to have a new update by 2020, which is next year. So the other thing is that the SADC is putting in place, although it is not in place yet, a grant program where you can apply for a grant to help cover the costs that you incur in updating the plan. We are going to apply for that grant. I asked Catherine to begin that process. We can even submit the application before they've officially rolled out the grant program, and I guess it just sits on hold until the grant program gets rolled out. I also said to Catherine that while in the past, I think what had happened was this sort of work would just be handed off to the professionals, that we ought to see how much of this we could do in-house. So I asked her to take a careful look and see what we could do in-house. I also asked her whether she could come up with some estimate as to what she thought it would cost if we use the professionals. She said she thinks that to revise this would be comparable to the revision we did a couple of years ago to the open space and recreation plan. She went back and pulled those invoices, and the total cost was around $7,200. So, assuming that we're in that ballpark, the range is anywhere from $0 to $7,000, say $500 to have this update done. How much of that would be covered by the grant, I don't know, but presumably at least some of it would be. So Catherine right now is trying to figure out what we can do internally and what we would need to do to use our professionals for. I don't know, Joanna, if you have any
I did
comments?
talk to Catherine when the initial round of these comprehensive farmland plans came around in 2010. East Amwell actually prepared their own. I just provided mapping and soil calculation support, but actually East Amwell is one of the few towns that did theirs almost entirely in-house. So and then they asked me to make a nice PDF out of it because they were having some technical difficulties. So I do have the Word documents and the PDFs, which I sent back to Catherine because I don't think she could find it in the files. And I just said, let me know what you need help with, but, certainly I can help update the mapping and the soil calcs. And, but last time, the Ag Committee with Judy Connor wrote the whole thing. And SADC offers a lot of support when you're writing these farmland plans, so.
Does the county offer support too? Because I know often they do, because they have to upload into their county-wide master
The first
plans.
time around, it was such a big process because
Yeah.
everybody was doing it at the same time with the new regulations. So a lot of the support came directly from SADC.
Okay.
Now that we're in the second round of this, we might get more support from the county on it.
Okay, good.
Now, look, in 2010, we had a more robust farmland and open space committee than we have now. So that's why I asked Catherine to try to get her arms around what could be done internally and what she thought we needed help with. I also want to get my arms around exactly what we might be able to get in the form of grant. So we're not looking for any approvals this evening. This was just an update. I mean, is that right? Is there anything else you want to add?
No, and I will say that, like with the open space plan, I know East Amwell got theirs, in on time for the 10-year period, but a lot of municipalities just missed that deadline, and the state has been very accepting of just, if you need extra time, just write a letter, and, as long as you're working on it, and they know that, granting extensions has not been an issue.
What's the penalty for not filing one?
We won't get our grant. We won't qualify
Yeah,
for
they
some
hold the
grants.
grant money over your head, but like I said, I've had towns that, just didn't want to do it or had affordable housing litigation stuff that they were dealing with and couldn't get to their, at least for the open space plans, and they were very accommodating and understood the stress that towns were going through at that time, so SADC has never been any different.
Look, it's ignoring for a moment the potential of any sort of penalty from the SADC for not getting it done on time. I'm going to push to get it done on time. I think it's a good thing to get done. It hasn't been done in almost 10 years. It's a good thing to get done. And my own view is if you don't set deadlines, then things just don't get done. So the goal here is going to be to get this done by the deadline. Let the other municipalities be the scope laws.
And just so the board knows, there is a distinction here. So the plan is done every about 10 years, but annually, there's reporting that happens from the municipalities to SADC for their PIG grants, their planning incentive grants. So every year, municipalities either had to update their PIG application funding, or they had to send a letter of no change down to SADC. So while the plan hasn't been done in 10 years, there's always updates going down to SADC for target farms and costs associated and things like that. So it hasn't been completely stale, it's just the document itself hasn't been updated. Were you gonna say
So it
something,
was
Chris?
like an FYI kind of thing.
Yep,
Yeah.
it's just an FYI.
All right, next item is the bed and breakfast ordinance. And Tam, I think you got a little,
Rick sent me a copy, a marked up copy of what the proposed changes are from the township committee. And there was just one small change,
Yeah.
which was really just a clarification from what I could tell. We had said that no signs were permitted, and township committee wanted to clarify, no signs pertaining to a bed and breakfast are permitted, so.
Identifying.
Identifying the bed and breakfast.
Yeah.
Some people like to put up a sign for the name of their farm, or maybe there's a home business, and I don't know what the signage permits are for home businesses. But those signs are not affected by the ordinance, so it's just signage as it pertains to the bed and breakfast. And that's the only change.
That's it?
But
That
they
was-
should
that was
always
just
come
for-
back, just so you know, it always has to come back to the planning board and then back to the
then it
township,
has to go back.
to the township.
It's
committee.
on the agenda, I think, for approval tomorrow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Do we need to vote or just
the consensus is that
All right.
it's good to go.
just say it's good to go?
Minor change.
Minor change, all right, it's good to go.
But what you're saying, Krista, is even a minor change like that, it would need to come back?
Yeah, it always has to come back,
Okay.
just for the planning board approval.
Okay. But if there were no change
It
made, it
still
would...
has to come back.
Between first and second reading.
Between first and second, right?
Oh, I guess that's right, yes, of course.
Between first and second. it
Of
has to
course,
come back.
that's right, yes.
To go
Okay.
back.
On the referral.
To go
yeah.
back to
The
that.
I mean,
section-
it's
Called the Section
interesting
26 review.
because it originated at the planning board,
Right.
Right. It
went
still
to the
has
township
see.
committee for introduction,
But it's still
Come
has-
back.
then
And
has
you
to come
wanted
back
to
to the
keep it.
planning board.
Right.
Okay, all right.
It's better when you agree with yourself.
He talked himself into it, right?
Life in a bureaucratic country.
All right, next item is applications checklist. I guess has to do, the art committee, we started to look at this kind of thing. We're trying to develop, I guess, an easier process for residents to submit applications to the planning board. Am I correct, too?
Right, I mean, currently, we have 7 different checklists. So what the ordinance review committee talked about was changing that and converting over to a matrix. And you should have gotten 4 different examples of these checklist matrices. And the ordinance review committee thinks this is a better way to go, considering how many checklists we have.
Yeah, I only use one.
Yeah. But we, this is a bunch of work to convert from lists to this. So we didn't want to do that without first coming to the planning board and seeing if you guys were okay with this.
I will say that in 2017, the planning board had tasked Dennis, myself, and Maria to do just that.
Okay.
And Maria took the lead, and there should be a file in her computer somewhere. And Dennis and I would just verify the things against our ordinance. But we took West Amwell's, because Maria was working at West Amwell at the time with the combined checklist. And we had redone it for all of East Amwell. So, and it was almost complete, and then, other items just took priority. But the lion's share of it was done. And I have the PDF form of it. I think Maria had either an Excel or a Word version of it. And it should be in the files, but it was pretty extensively done. And it was a combined checklist similar to what West Amwell
But you used the
uses.
West Amwell template?
Yeah.
So a lot of the work,
We need to
a
find
lot of the work may be
Yeah,
done.
that's, wow.
That would be nice.
So-
It also makes
I
sense.
went through my files and I just had a
You
PDF.
just had a PDF. If
But
you could
I
find
think
it.
Maria, because I remember it was driving her crazy, the formatting. She
Yeah.
was going nuts with it. But
You
there
should be
is-
able to convert a PDF to Word.
It's just so many
Yeah, but it's-
columns and,
It
you
gets
know,
really.
Yeah, it doesn't
charts get
convert.
really sloppy.
I know
she
Try to
was
convert them.
not
Yeah.
happy.
If you can find it, that
Yeah.
would be amazing. So,
Or if you can, we'll just ask Maria to help us.
Yeah, we could possibly do that. I assume governing body won't have a problem with this?
Not at all.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Look, we're all for streamlining and making everybody's life easier.
Unless it's a summer.
This
Well-
is just another example of where time and effort and money was spent and it goes into a black hole. That's why I'm working with Krista to try to have things we generate put in a way where people can easily find them on our system.
Yeah. Well, I'm really glad you said that. Until you said that, I had no idea it existed.
Well, Maria did
I
the
know.
lion's share of it, and then Dennis and I would just review it for consistency across the
That's
ordinance, and then we'd give it back to her, and then she'd start screaming about the formatting. So it was a big project, and
So
so
it's
I
just
know
like
it's
what they have now then.
yeah, it's just like that, except
All right, well, if we get the
Right.
document and there are formatting issues, there's a secretary at my cluster who is the queen of doing that stuff. I can ask her to play with it to clean it up if we need to clean up the formatting. She's really good with charts and.
So then for the present time, all of these checklists that were sent out, we're just gonna put that on hold until we see where this whole
Right.
situation is,
Right.
right?
Yes, I just wanted
Yeah.
you guys to
Yeah.
have some samples of it so you know what we're talking
Right.
about, so
Right,
It was a-
what's,
yeah.
what's out there.
make sure.
I think eventually,
It'd be so much
it's,
easier.
the look is to go put it all online, to make this online
Yeah,
forms.
It would be great if
onto the
people could
website.
fill it out online and then print it out, or print it out and fill it out if they want, have
Right,
it out
or
there.
submit,
Yeah, that's
you know,
it.
that kind of thing, so, but ultimately,
Essentially like an e-handbook, your guidance
Right.
and your tools.
exactly,
And the process flows and the quality checks and gates. You don't go from application to complete unless you've got either the denial or the signature from the secretary, the admin, and all these other
right,
things.
like a new product review, right,
Yeah.
Right.
exactly. So, all right, that's good,
Good.
good thing it exists, huh?
Yes.
Or we think it does, so,
But we have a lot more work to do than we do.
I know, right?
That's great.
All right, moving right along, Fosbic, Mr. Wolf.
The only thing I would say is that I've been paying a lot of attention to our Ag Advisory Committee, and it occurred to me that there's significant overlap between FOSBAC and Ag Advisory, particularly where we are now. I had thought about merging the two committees, but for various reasons that didn't make sense. So we are keeping the two committees separate, but what we are working on is having the two committees have their meetings on the same night. FOSBAC and Ag Advisory would meet separately for the first half hour, and then thereafter we would come together and meet together and start working on things together, things that have significant overlap. So that will probably start happening in August. Hopefully it'll create efficiencies and maybe help us to get some more things done, because we'll have a bigger group that can work on projects. That's really all I have on FOSBAC at this point.
Francis?
The Environmental Commission, we're moving forward on defining a process and also of getting things. One of the things that's being worked on, and in whatever state it's gonna come forward, is that annual report for last year that the Environmental Commission, as to what it did, is obligated to submit. I'll organize it based on the input, and it won't necessarily be pretty, but it will be fit for use. And as hopefully things become a little bit more structured, it will be better. Implementing things, there've been people wanting to have minutes available within such and such. So a general process of draft minutes within 2 weeks, but also to almost immediately put the audio up so that the public has access to whatever. Definitely, again, more structure. Implementing a process to ensure that nothing is sent on the behalf of the EC to the VIP or anyone else unless it's come through the board and been, reviewed. There's also will be a timeline if you want to get something in. then you have to back off, and that deadline is fast approaching. And then other kinds of things. Desperately needs members, efforts, and if you've got, you know, from folks that will work on the various things, whether it's easements or what people wanted to put into an RSI, or to do things, not just envision contracts.
Do you have a list, a punch list of?
I have a punch list of the things that'll be covered in this report. The challenge with the punch list is we need a contractor, whether it's an internal resource or something, or a volunteer, or maybe we need to get to those things and then decide in conjunction with collaboration across boards and with the TC as to what's important to you.
Prioritizing.
Because you've still got out there the green team, and I don't know where that's going, and things in that regard. If anyone knows anybody with a workaholic gene, that would be willing to spend the fourth Monday of the month here, it would be much appreciated.
Can I volunteer my wife?
Yes, I've
No.
been requesting her anyway.
I will not do that.
Or a junior member might be nice.
Workaholic out.
Those kinds of things. I think the one thing everybody's in agreement with is there's been a lot of frustration and things need to change. And hopefully, we're going to be moving forward with that. And if I'm in custody with his ankle bracelet, then so be it.
Krista?
I just brought to my attention if the planning board wants to post their ordinances on the website, like our ordinances, like
the
that
code.
are coming up for the meetings. Like we do the agendas, the minutes, is the ordinance something that we want to post as well?
Draft ordinances,
No,
Are you talking
after
about-
they're finalized.
after they're finalized.
Prior to their codification, yeah, that little, there's always that period of time, you
There's a
know,
lag period,
before
yeah.
they're
It's-
codified.
I think
There's
that's
usually
helpful for the public.
A newly
Right.
adopted ordinances.
Because if they go
Yeah.
straight to the code book, there could be a gap in time, and if there's an ordinance that, in the interim, you gotta enable the public to find.
It's a good idea. Usually most municipalities have one line that says, here's your ordinance, and then underneath it, it's newly adopted ordinances, the ones that haven't been codified yet.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would
I think
be
that'd
in
be a
favor of
great
that,
idea.
absolutely.
Sounds to me like a slam dunk.
Okay.
That's it. All right, other than, if anybody finds any additional information about Gail's husband, I know they were making
Yeah.
plans or whatever today.
Yeah, I'll
So
be
we can
talking.
I think we
circulate
should
that.
do an arrangement or something. If we want to chip
Yeah,
in to do
that would
an
be,
arrangement.
I think that,
From
or a
the planning board.
donation or something.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, until we get more details, she may want a donation.
I was gonna say, yeah, they may donate to something
yeah.
specific rather than
Right.
flowers, I mean.
Correct. So she was at the funeral home today, so I'm sure it'll be in the next day or so.
Krista, can you keep us in the loop on that?
Yeah, I didn't even know. She didn't tell me, so.
But I
She's
think
gonna
what
call me
Krista is
tomorrow.
asking is, does the planning board as a group, do we want to do something, or do we just want to do things individually?
I think
I would
probably
think that it would be
individually.
worthwhile to, given her long service, her history, and her contributions, the fact that she reached out to get access to Mark so that he was prepared for tonight is an indication of what she's brought to the township and has contributed for 30-some years. And that should be acknowledged, and maybe a motion to do such a thing influenced by whatever, charities or whatever might be done, but definitely at minimum, a letter of support or something,
I think it'd be nice if the board did
nice to
something.
do.
Yeah.
And then we can always do individually. I suspect there's a Pointer Club
We should
donation
do
in
it
my future.
collectively from the board.
I'm fine with that.
Should do it collectively from the board, we'll figure it out,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Start brainstorming later.
All right, so we'll find out more details and what,
Okay.
if she's got a charity, then could reach out to everybody, and then everybody's okay with that?
Yep.
Okay. All right, next item, correspondence, New Jersey Planner. All right, can I have a motion to open to the public?
So moved.
Seeing there's no public, is it worthwhile?
Second.
Motion to close to the public.
Move we close.
Second.
All right.
Aye.
I do have a little bit of new business. I don't know that that might be, or a discussion point for activity is that having to do, and maybe as part of a handbook or moving forward, we've had some discussions off and on about billing processes and the order that they come to Gail before they go to Margaret, as they did in the past, and that does not appear to have been adhered to. And also in terms of, you know, how much thumb is on the scale.
I know that the girls in our office were told to send the billing to Krista.
Yeah, well,
So
there are
that's what we're
bills, well, yeah, and the bills, some bills are still coming to the attention of Maria Andrews, and the routing of them, and they're being sent directly to Margaret's
It was taken
assistant.
care of.
That was taken care of, but I know it was a stressor, and some of the content, you know, that when we get to the bills of the evening.
That's where we
That's
are
where
now.
we are
Yep.
now.
All right. Anybody got any questions on the,
Yeah, I do, about, especially, hopefully it'll all pop up in this thing that hasn't gone to death. The, Ferrero Engineering bills, aside from the routing of them, but I was struck by that we're being charged in the same month as a resignation for some kind of Ferrero Engineering, I guess some sort of membership. And I vaguely recall there was some kind of $600 or something, there's a couple of them, that there was some discussion now whether or not that then transfers somewhere, but, you know, why are we paying Ferrero Engineering for those specific bills? And, you know, those NJCF kinds of things.
That's New Jersey Conservation.
That was the application.
That's
That's
New
the
Jersey
application.
Conservation, that was an application.
That was the Higgins one?
Okay, so these are Ferrero Engineering, because the detail that was on there, at least, was a bit clear as mud.
Review subdivision plans, prepare tech review memo, drafting deed plot, created outbound map, I can't say it.
Well, there were 3 or 4 attachments, but, you know, in line with our earlier discussions and things like that.
It even says Higgins on there.
Yeah, and some other kinds of things that I would hope that there would be, let's see, here's where it is.
Francis, if when you're reviewing the bills, you think that you need to see some backup for anything, I think you should feel free to reach out to Krista
Yeah.
and ask her to get you the backup.
Yeah, and different things that I've been locked in a building twice in the last 2 weeks and working 12-hour days, and I have not been good in that regard, but
But are we okay with the bills? Can we
we're
go ahead
okay
and
for now,
approve
so
them?
we have a motion?
yeah.
I move approval of the bills.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in
adjourned.
favor?
All in favor?
Get up and
I'm
leave.
gavelous.
We gotta start all over again.
That's it.
Mark.
I know. Gotta roll that family in.